Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's press briefing on the coronavirus. I'm Donna Bush. Welcome to our CIGTV viewers, as well as those joining us by social media platforms and listeners on Radio Cayman. We'd like to go now to Pastor Winston Rose for today's prayer.
O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the storm or blast, and our eternal home. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the access you have given us through your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ, to your throne of grace where we can find help in this our time of need. We thank you for your favor and numerous blessings bestowed upon these islands. We also thank you for your promise to hear us when we, your people, call upon you. We are encouraged today as we recall your specific instructions given to your church to pray for those in authority, so that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. In obedience to your command, we ask for your divine guidance to be given to all of our leaders in government, to those persons responsible for health care, and for all other matters that are necessary for our well-being in these three islands. We pray that your Spirit will rest upon each of us who reside here, that we will submit to and cooperate with those in authority and do our part in fighting this plague that has come upon our world. We pray for your healing grace to rest on all who stand in need of it. We pray for peace of mind for those who are anxious and fearful, and for your protection for all of us, but in particular for those who are most in danger due to the nature of their work. We thank you for those who have recovered or are recovering, and for the progress that has been made in suppressing this virus. We petition you for this briefing today, that you will facilitate the clear communication of the information that is needed by all of us. These things we pray in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son and our Savior. Amen.
And thank you, Pastor Rose. We now welcome our panelists, His Excellency the Governor, Premier the Honorable Alden McLaughlin, Minister of Health, the Honorable Dwayne Seymour. Also in the room with us are Dr. John Lee, Chief Medical Officer, as well as Commissioner of Police, Mr. Derek Byrne. We also have the Director of HMCI, Mrs. Danny Coleman, joining us, as well as Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez from the HSA. Of course, we'd like to welcome members of the media who are all joining us via Zoom in the room as well. We'd also like to thank our sign language interpreter, Miss Carolyn Powell, for always being here with us. We go now first to Dr. Lee for the latest.
Good afternoon. I have 44 results to report today, which have been taken over the last few days. There is one positive case to add to our 53 total, bringing it to a total of 54 now. This additional case was somebody who had traveled, and the person had been isolating since their return from travel. Additionally, 43 negatives were added, bringing our total negatives to 526, and we remain with 6 recovered patients. There are 16 symptomatic patients, 20 asymptomatic patients, 6 have clinically recovered, and the figures for Cayman Brac are unchanged, with 1 person being positive who has clinically recovered, and there are 26 negatives in Little Cayman and Cayman Brac. Of the people that I've reported, 5 have been admitted to hospital. The age range for these starts at 48 and has an average age of 61. 3 are inpatients at the Health Services Authority. 1, unfortunately, is now requiring ventilation for respiratory symptoms related to COVID-19 disease. The 2 others are stable and are doing well. There are 2 inpatients at Health City, both of whom are asymptomatic and are admitted there for other matters. In total, there are around 67 people in isolation as of this morning. However, I do need to report to you that we have introduced a containment area under a notice under the public health law around an apartment complex in Georgetown. One person from there has tested positive and has agreed to be relocated to the government isolation facility. Public Health is currently undertaking extensive interviews and testing and is performing a risk assessment on the whole property. You may also be aware that 2 people returned back to the Cayman Islands. They actually arrived by air ambulance, not because they required the services of the air ambulance, but they were able to obtain travel through this facility because the air ambulance was due to has taken somebody out back to Florida for treatment. These people have been isolated in the government facility. I'm just checking I've told you everything that I need to tell. There's quite a bit to tell today. I think the last thing I wish to say is a plea, really. If we help the spread of COVID-19 by gathering, by staying too close to others, then we're going to have deaths on our hands. And I really don't want that to happen. Around the world, mass graves are being dug. Can you please comply with the requests to stay away from others, stay isolated, stay home, and do not gather? That is what is going to protect this disease from spreading in our community. That is going to protect us from having deaths on our hands that we can do without. Please stay home, Cayman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We're going to go straight to the media. There's a question from Wendy at CNS. Wendy, go ahead.
Thanks, Donna. I have a few questions, actually. The situation in Georgetown, what was, you say that the person had agreed to go to quarantine, but we understand that in actual fact they were breaching the mandated isolation requirements. Is that correct?
I understand that there was some confusion in that matter, but the person went voluntarily to the government facility.
Following up on that, it does seem now to be a particularly huge issue in the community. I'm sure you've seen social media. It's now dominating all of the questions we get. I know you gave a very comprehensive answer relatively recently about the dangers of forcing people into quarantine or isolation, but can you give us some reassurances about how the isolation is working for those that are mandated under the law, and have there been any other breaches that you can tell us about?
Wendy, I think this is probably the only instance where somebody had been given instruction but didn't follow it. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, saying there was confusion there. We are taking really a lot of efforts behind the scenes that you're not aware of in order to try to monitor these situations. There's been a great deal of additional human resource and planning with regards to it. I've mentioned before about, we have a lot of people who are absolutely in compliance with the request to stay at home. So we need to manage each of these situations on a case-by-case basis. For example, in this particular instance in the apartments in Georgetown, that's why I said a risk assessment was going in, because some of the units there may not actually require any further isolation. So it is on a case-by-case basis, and we also at the same time need to support anybody that is being isolated, and that's sometimes a problem. People don't realize that we're actually not only there to ask them to stay at home if they're at risk of spreading COVID-19, but we're also there to support them. So if they need supplies, we will arrange for that to happen. And I think perhaps that message is not being widely shared, but we wish to support people through this process.
Okay, Wendy, if that's it for your questions for Dr. Lee, we're going to move on to Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times. Ralph?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Lee, and thank you for being so clear with those numbers once again. I have some questions regarding the calls to the hospitals and those visits for those patients who may think that they are not well. Would you be able to answer those questions, or maybe Dr. Rodriguez can answer them?
I think it'll probably be the HSA that will be able to answer those better than me.
Okay, should I wait now for them to come on the microphone, or should I?
We do have Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez joining us. Dr. Williams?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll be the number of calls to the hospitals, number of calls on hospital visits by patients. Can you tell me that number, please? So far.
That's a number of calls to the flu clinic or a number of patients attending the hospital?
Both the number of calls to the flu clinics and the number of patients who may have attended with symptoms.
Well, the number a call to the flu clinic average are still averaging around 75 calls per day, and the number of patients who attended the flu clinic during the last 5 days, there were 42 patients.
Okay, thank you very much. What I'm trying to get is do we think that we are testing enough people who call to the flu hotline or visit the hospital?
The physicians at the clinics actually are following their guidelines, our current guidelines about testing, and any patient that meet the criteria to be tested for COVID or is suspected of having coronavirus have been tested.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for you.
Okay, we'll move now to Reshma from the Cayman Compass. Reshma?
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon. Dr. Lee, with regards to the recovered patients, can you say if they are being closely monitored for relapse and if they are going to be retested?
Yeah, so anybody gets retested, Reshma. So anybody who's been positive will get 2 tests at least 24 hours apart within 48 hours after the end of their symptoms or the end of 14 days, whichever is the longer.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Can you say with the tests that you shared today, if any of those were frontline workers who were tested? Or
there have been a spattering of frontline workers throughout the period of testing. If they've had any contact with people, certainly, as you'll know, originally from the Health City and then from the HSA, we've had them coming through all the while.
Okay. Would you be able to say how many, or would that be something that you can get for us later on?
I would have to, I will stand corrected, but I don't think there have been. Are you talking about the total number of the positives?
Yes, the total number.
Yes, I would need to ask the HSA if they could help and Health City to provide that figure. I don't have that. Certainly, when we're presented with results, I'm sure you can imagine we don't have them disaggregated by where they work.
Mm-hmm. Of course, understandable. In terms of this may be a question for Dr. Williams, if he could provide us with an update on the ventilators. Have they arrived on island, or how soon do we expect them to be at the hospital?
Yeah, 4 of the ventilators have arrived, and they're on island, and there are 4 on their way.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. My final question, this one has come in. A couple of our viewers and readers have been reaching out asking if the health clinics, the health centers are open for those who may be feeling unwell with non-COVID related issues, if they can, go to the health centers as opposed to reaching out to go to the hospital.
Yeah, the health center have remained open. The only change that we don't have in the evening clinics because of the curfew regulations, but they have been open 5 days a week.
Thank you.
Okay, I do have a question from the public for Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee, if you could go into any more detail as to the one positive case today. You did mention something about travel history or travel contact. Can you explain further?
Yes, that positive person had actually traveled themselves, and because of that travel had come back during the period where we were advising everybody to self-isolate and had automatically self-isolated.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to call on the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Derek Byrne, to come and give us the very latest on what's happening with his officers as they try to keep a handle on things around the islands.
Good afternoon. Reporting on Easter Sunday, we had a full lockdown yesterday and all went reasonably well. During the early part of the day, 46 persons were intercepted by police out and about on the public roads in breach of hard curfew. That was 45 in Grand Cayman and 1 in Cayman Brac. This was a complete mix of persons out walking, exercising and driving vehicles, reporting that they were going to visit shops or to visit friends. All 46 persons were warned for prosecution. Yesterday, there was no activity reported on the public beaches across the islands. For the moment, crime remains stable across the islands. There is no increase in any crime category. Overnight, looking at our interceptions, Little Cayman, all quiet, no issues reported. Cayman Brac, 15 vehicles intercepted by police. No breaches of curfew were detected as all drivers were exempted essential services personnel. Grand Cayman overnight, 104 vehicles stopped by police. No breaches of curfew detected as all were exempted essential services personnel. But separately, 1 pedestrian and 1 pedal cyclist were stopped by police and found in breach of curfew, and both were warned for prosecution. Looking at this morning, Easter Monday, bank holiday, soft curfew is in place today, Easter Monday, between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. this evening. This provides permissions for persons in the alphabet range A to K to shop at supermarkets, visit pharmacies and gas stations. Businesses at supermarkets, pharmacies and gas stations are operating well today. They're being well managed, well controlled, and social distancing protocols are being followed. During today's soft curfew period, deliveries of food are permitted between 12 midday and 9 p.m, and exercise in public places, except public beaches, is permitted between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Access to public beaches by any persons across the island is strictly prohibited at any time today, Easter Monday, by order of curfew imposed between the hours of 12:01 a.m. this morning and 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. No issues of note have occurred on our public beaches this morning, and the hard curfew order is working well and being complied with. Our ATVs and additional officers are on the beaches performing enforcement patrols. Our helicopter and marine units continue to be deployed on extended tours, monitoring ground and marine activity. This morning, 17 persons were found in breach of the soft curfew regulations, mainly motorists travelling without legal requirement to travel. And for the first time today, we've started to issue tickets as provided for under the new regulations. So 17 tickets have been issued this morning for breach of soft curfew regulations. I mentioned that the hard curfew is in place across the beaches today, Bank Holiday Monday. And I think all our listening public will be aware that the existing curfew order runs until this Friday morning at 7 a.m, which is the 17th of April. I have consulted with His Excellency the Governor, and I have now issued a curfew order imposing a curfew across all public beaches on the Cayman Islands from today, which is the 13th of April, right through until 5 a.m. on Friday morning, the 17th of April. This coincides with the existing curfew order that is in place. So to clarify this position for our listening public, this curfew means in effect that a hard curfew or full lockdown of all our public beaches across the Cayman Islands is in place. And this prohibits any person or persons from entering, walking, swimming, snorkeling, fishing, exercising or engaging in any type of marine activity on our public beaches throughout the Cayman Islands at any time today and between now and Friday morning, the 17th of April at 5 a.m. And for clarity, public beach means the portion of the beach that ends at the high water mark, often referred to as the soft sand. This will be of particular interest to persons residing in beachside resorts. And in this regard, I remind all persons that a breach of the hard curfew order is a criminal offence carrying a penalty of 3,000 Cayman dollars and imprisonment for 1 year or both. And the legal framework for this hard curfew is contained at Section 49(1) of the Police Law 2017 revision. And just in closing, a reminder that we return to hard curfew this evening, running 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. in the morning. And unless you are an exempted person as essential services, you should not be out and about in a public place for any purpose. Police and mobile and static patrols will be in place across the islands to impose the hard curfew. Please observe the curfew hours. Please stay at home, Cayman. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Commissioner Byrne. We do have a few questions from members of the press. We're going to begin with Reshma from the Cayman Compass.
Thank you, Donna. First of all, thank you, Commissioner, for your report. I'm just curious, with your announcement, what was the reasoning for extending the beach ban if we had compliance today?
I think the risk is far too high. The risk and the threat has been identified. I think on last Saturday we heard the results, 8 positive tests from Dr. Lee, Chief Medical Officer. The risk is far too high of a serious hazard across the Cayman Islands. On that basis, there is no room for complacency, and it is absolutely necessary to enforce the order, regrettably.
Thank you for that. You told us in your report 46 people were warned for prosecution. I think it may be helpful to explain why these individuals are being warned for prosecution as opposed to being charged in that first instance.
So, yeah, and good question. I think we've gone through the process of explaining this before. Warrant for prosecution means you will be prosecuted at a future stage or a future date by summons. To arrest persons now, bring them to the custody detention centre and process them would be a disproportionate reaction by police and could very well be seen as overstretch or overreach by police, something we're very anxious to avoid. So it's probably the fairest and most reasonable way to deal with a person who commits that criminal offence in breach of the curfew order.
Thank you. I'm just curious, you said 17 tickets were issued today for curfew breaches. Is it possible for you to indicate what sort of offences these tickets were issued for?
Yes, so the majority were issued to motorists out in breach, in other words, not in the alphabetical listing A to K, with excuses, I'm going for cigarettes, I'm going to visit a friend, I'm going to buy water, you know, without legal excuse to be on the road during the curfew hour, the soft curfew hours.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner.
Okay, we move to Wendy at CNS. Thanks, Reshma.
Thank you, Donna. This is for the Commissioner, actually. Going back to Friday, when we had the whole situation on the beach there, which is what's triggered the beach closures now. Can you say how many of those people that were partying on the beach on Friday, allegedly drinking and gathering, how many of those were warned for prosecution? Because we never got a number on that.
Okay, and the answer to that is almost nil. And I think I explained on Friday the difficulties we were having as our officers on the ATVs and foot patrols were approaching them. They were breaking up into groups of 2. And when they were approached and spoken to, they said, we're socialising on the beach. I explained then that we saw cooler boxes and persons drinking. It's a real difficulty. It's a particular difficulty for police to try and enforce it. You get the sense that people are out there in larger groups, but well understand the requirement to remain in groups of 2 as the police are approaching. So the answer, I think, is almost nil for Friday.
Okay, Wendy, if you have no further questions for Commissioner Byrne, we'd like to thank him for his time. And now we're going to go to our panel, beginning with Premier the Honourable Alden McLaughlin for the very latest. Premier McLaughlin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'll start with the customary world stats. Total cases globally, 1,888,849. Total cases recovered, 438,168. In the United States, 566,602 cases, up 6,302 overnight. Total deaths now at 22,877, up 772 overnight. Spain, 169,496, up 2,665 overnight. Total deaths, 17,489, up 280 overnight. Italy, 159,516, up 3,153 overnight. Total deaths, 20,465, up 566 overnight. France, total cases 132,591. We don't have a note of the new cases. Total deaths 14,393. Germany, 127,916 cases, up 62 overnight. Total deaths 3,022. I don't have the numbers for new deaths overnight. United Kingdom, 88,621, up 4,342 overnight. Total deaths 11,329, up 717 overnight. China, 82,160, up 108 overnight. Total deaths 3,341, up just 2 overnight. Netherlands, 26,551, 964 new cases overnight. Total deaths 2,823, up 86 overnight. Portugal, 16,934, up 349 overnight. Total deaths 535, up 31 overnight. India, 10,453, up 1,248 overnight. 358 deaths, up 27 overnight. Philippines, 4,932, up 284 overnight. Total deaths 315, up 18 overnight. New Zealand, 1,349 cases, up 19 overnight. Total deaths 5, up 1 overnight. Trinidad and Tobago, 113 cases, 8 deaths. No reports in terms of new cases or new deaths overnight. Jamaica, similarly, 72 cases, 4 deaths. New York State, 195,031 cases, up 5,616 overnight. Total deaths, 10,056, up 671 overnight. Our sister territories, Anguilla, 3 cases, Bermuda, 57, with 4 deaths. British Virgin Islands, just 3 cases. Montserrat, 11 cases, up 2 overnight. Turks and Caicos, 9 cases, up 1 overnight. I just want to say a few things based on my following of what's being discussed in the public and on social media and elsewhere. Although I've spoken about most of these things before, I think they bear some need for reinforcement. I've heard the criticism by some that the government doesn't have a plan, and many people say they want to know what the government's plan is. The government does have a plan. The plan is aimed at suppression and ultimate elimination of the virus within the environs of the Cayman Islands. All of the measures that we have taken so far and all the ones that we are still taking are aimed at that ultimate goal. That involves necessarily, or has involved necessarily, essentially the shutdown of the local economy. We are deeply conscious that this has grave financial impact and indeed is causing and will continue to cause major hardship to many, many people, in fact, almost everyone that is here. But it is necessary if we are to be able to effectively employ the only known means of containing and attempting to eliminate the virus. No country in the world has yet succeeded in eliminating it. Even China, with all of its great efforts, I've just read some stats that cases are still popping up. And those measures are essentially, and the most important one of all, is physical or social distancing, keeping people apart from each other. So almost everything that we're doing is aimed at that. The other component is testing. Now, until very recently, we haven't had the ability to test. And we're still not quite there because although we've got more test kits than we need, there are still other aspects of the process that are still being worked through. But hopefully by the end of this week, very early next week, we will be able to go very aggressively into testing of frontline personnel and just about anybody who we think or they think need or warrant being tested. That is the government's approach to this suppression and ultimate elimination of the virus within the broader community. Once we are able to do that, we would be able to release most of these restrictions that are currently in place. We would be able to allow the local economy to restart in a limited way. We've seen what is being attempted, and we're watching very carefully in many other countries. Spain is now trying slowly to restart its economy. Looking at it from where I do, with my inexpert eyes, I still think it's very early for them to do that. We've seen that they're successfully doing it in China. Cayman, of course, is a much smaller place. It is almost impossible for us not to have interaction with many people, regardless of whether they come from East End or West Bay. This is a very small place, and we all tend to congregate in many of the same areas. So it's trying to reopen Cayman district by district will be an absolute impossibility. We have to eliminate the disease as far as possible within each of the islands. And even then, unless we absolutely restrict travel between Cayman, Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, we are still potentially spreading the virus if it still remains within the local community. So the only way, I say all of that to say that the only way that we can effectively restart this economy is if we are able to effectively stamp out the virus here. Otherwise, nobody is going to want to move about these islands doing business, at least no sensible person, with the real risk that the virus is still there and that they might contract it. So it is deeply concerning to me and to us when we see and we hear some of the very narcissistic comments that are made, which contend that essentially you should just let the dead, the sick, the elderly and vulnerable people just die, just accept that they are casualties in this particular game, and we just let them die off, and then the strong will survive, and we can just get on with business. That is absolutely not the approach of the government. It is absolutely not my approach. And so whatever measures that we have to employ to ensure that we give every person who lives and breathes here an opportunity to survive this very difficult, very challenging, very dangerous time, we are going to employ. And thus, though it is with the deepest of regret that we have had to take the decision to close the beaches and access to the water, it is because there continue to be significant numbers of people who are absolutely reckless, who are completely blind to what is appearing on the television screens every single day about what the ravages of this virus right across the world. Believe you me, I've seen some stuff written by ostensibly sensible people that leave me absolutely shaking my head. I don't know how anyone can believe that they are somehow immune to this virus because they are 35 or 40 years old. No one knows how your body is going to respond to the virus. But it's not just about you. You may survive it, but you may have been, or you may be, the instrument of another's demise because you passed it to someone who passed it on to them. That's the bit that some people just don't seem to get. So what I want to say is, if we can adhere to these protocols that we put in place, we have a chance of being able to eliminate this in relatively short order. Otherwise, it's going to be one of two things. Death by 1,000 cuts, because the virus just slowly creeps through the community, and it takes months, and we're under this set of restrictions, or even more stringent ones, for a much longer period of time. Or we move to a full 21-day lockdown like they've had to do in some other places, where only one member of the household is allowed out once a week to get necessary supplies. It's going to have to be one or the other, because we can't get down into July and August under these restrictive provisions that are currently in place, which are constantly being breached by the minority. The majority of people are complying and are being very, very sensible. But it doesn't take more than a few to cause this virus to spread. Now, I know a number of people are being encouraged because the numbers are still relatively small. The first case that we had is now a month ago. Today is 22 days since we closed our borders. And we've tested 580 people. We have 54 positives. We still have only the one death, and we have a limited number of people in hospital. And so those stats, I think, might give people a sense of complacency. But believe you me, the situation that we have with the apartment complex in Georgetown that has just been reported should make everybody extremely concerned. It certainly makes us very concerned. And until we can go through the process of tracing and testing, we all need to be absolutely on our guard. Do not leave your home unless you absolutely have to. It is the safest place you can be. That is the simplest message I can deliver, the most straightforward I can deliver. Stay home, Cayman. We keep saying it over and over again. If we can suppress this virus effectively, we will be able to start doing all the things that we want to do again. If we continue the way we are, this is going to stretch out interminably. And if you think you're frustrated now, if you think that you feel like your liberties are being impinged upon, it is only going to get worse, because the government is resolute and determined that we are not going to, by our actions, allow this virus to spread right through this community. We're going to give it every single effort we possibly can, employ every possible measure that we possibly can to keep that from happening. Please, my people, work with us. I beg you, work with us. Let's collectively be the only country in the world that effectively eliminates this virus and can get on with our domestic activities while the virus burns itself out around the rest of the world.
Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. Now we're going to move on to His Excellency.
Thank you very much. And yet again, I add my own voice to everything that the Honourable Premier just said. I know many people will be disappointed about the beaches, but I think the Police Commissioner very clearly set out why we have no choice on that. And again, I know people will be concerned about the Georgetown apartment complex, but again, we are throwing a lot of resource at that to manage the complex, to manage the situation, and we have caught it early. In all of this, I do think we have to try and remain positive and retain hope. And the fact that we can watch what other countries are doing as they are ahead of us in this crisis does give us a lot of experience to learn from. So we can learn from how others are going to, at some point, gradually open up their economies. I was also struck this morning, I listened very carefully to the World Health Organization and a spokesman saying that everything needs to change so everything stays the same. And I thought that was a really poignant comment, because what it means is that this virus is going to be with us for a long time. But to get back to the life that we all want to get back to, a lot of things will have to change. We're washing our hands regularly. We're not touching our face and eyes. We're social distancing. We're wearing masks. And all of that is breaking the transmission of this disease. And our plan at the moment is working. We are isolating people. We are tracing contacts. We are looking after our elderly and vulnerable. And the new behaviours that we're all developing will, at some point, enable us to open up the local economy whilst we wait for a vaccine. So we do need to retain that hope and that positive approach to the fact that we have the right strategy, and if everyone bears with us, we will come through this. I just finally want to make a reference to the Minister of Health sitting beside me, because he's been the subject of a lot of criticism on social media over the last few days. I mean, I see a minister who has shown incredible compassion and really cares incredibly for the welfare of his people. There was a Compass article today referring to his role in the South Korea deal at the very beginning, helping set up the business contacts. And I've seen from behind the scenes the energy and the passion that he has put into bringing together our healthcare professionals around a common goal of protecting the health of these people. Everyone is entitled to their opinions, and we live in a democratic society. But at this time, I would appeal to people to rather than discord, rancour and anger, let's find unity, let's be a community that comes together, and let's support each other to get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we're going to move on to our Minister of Health.
Thank you, Donna. It was very kind of you, Governor. Thank you so much.
I've got tears in my eyes now. Oh.
No, we don't want that again.
No, we can't deal with that today. Good afternoon, everyone. Cayman Barak, Grand Cayman, and Little Cayman. Thank you, Brackers, for reaching out to me. Thanks for applauding the job that the government is doing and to keep you safe. And what we're doing here, we have to save lives. And at the same time, we need to save the livelihood. And as an entrepreneur, I feel the pain of the many persons who have called me and expressed their concerns. Although the airport is closed until May, we will soon need to concentrate on our local economy. But as the Premier said earlier, the sooner that we can adhere to the measures that are put in place, the sooner we're able to try to get back to some of our norms. I want to quote John Quincy Adams, the 6th U.S. president, who said, if our actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Some people, rather than to try and risk failure, they don't try at all. They're cowards. Remember, the way you treat people, you don't need, it's a real sign as for the people that you don't need the way that you treat them. So, but in this world, we have to prepare ourselves to experience persons who, in your opinion, have less than you, but have a better position than you. I've learned that people are jealous of where you are and not who you are. The American Secretary of Defense, former Donald Rumsfeld, once said, we go to war with the army we have, not the army you might want or wish to have. So I'm here in the war with you. Well, I'm back. And heard the saying, keep a licking and keep on ticking. That's me here in full effect today to ensure I support the team and put in measures in place to keep the spread of the ugly disease to a minimum. speaking of ugly, on Saturday I didn't finish my segment because of ugly filth. And I want to say God bless you all, and I pray for you all. And I won't be distracted from the amazing work that has already been done by our team in government and the private sector. Kudos to them. I forgive you because I know you're cooped up on curfew and your movement has been restricted and your fear of contracting the virus. It could be anywhere. Get it, I get it. But still be mindful, we are humans being human beings. We're tired and consumed with uncertainties, just like you. Thanks for the prayers and the well wishes from all over the world, in Canada, USA, UK, the Caribbean, South Africa, the clergy, Bodden Towners, my Caymanians, the prayer warriors, my family and friends. I sincerely thank you for the love and support shown. One person reached out to me and apologized for their postings. I thank her for humbling herself to do that. Cayman, let's not be distracted, and let's keep moving on. In fact, the very definition of the word trailblazer means a person who blazes a trail for others to follow. For the 90%, I am your trailblazer. Don't worry, I won't be like the Rasta man who, after hearing what their other percentages were, begged to squeeze himself back in the percentage of what they had been labeled. I know people out there will understand that joke. This is the Monday after our Savior raised from the dead, and on Easter Sunday or Resurrection Sunday, according to the Bible, Jesus is believed to have risen from his grave as proof of his holy divinity on the third day of his death. The very notion that Jesus Christ was crucified and came back to life is the premise of the Christian faith in theology. Easter is far more important than any other holy day. This gives devout Christians the assurance that they too can escape the mortal bounds of life and live forever in the afterlife with God. What an awesome opportunity we have been given. Praise God. Today's scripture from Psalms, 3rd Psalms. Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are those who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help from God. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Matthew 5:44. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. In our continuous attempt to have persons remain at home, in our translations, I said I would bring them back on Monday in my usual spirit. Today we're going to hear translations from in Romanian and Arabic. Here we go. Please stay at home. In Romanian. Te rog să stai acasă. And in Arabic, there are actually 25 countries that claim Arabic is an official or co-official language. And did you know that 422 million speakers in the Arab world, making it one of the 5 most spoken languages in the world? So Arabic, please stay at home. Uzel bakau un fil manzili. Thank you. The subject of face masks has come up, and some businesses locally are already trying to protect their staff, especially if they don't have a lot of staff. It's wise to do so. I see Cayman Airways Cargo stating, if you're entering their office for your safety and theirs, you're required to wear a face mask. I know the Red Cross started a DIY movement, and some other local entrepreneurs have started making face masks. I applaud that. The government wants to get in a position with the right stock to furnish the community and even each of the 19 MLAs to give them a stash so they can hand out everywhere. This is not a time for politics. It's time for love, unity, and saving every life in Cayman. Many countries like the US, China, Hong Kong, and Singapore are recommending wearing a face mask in the public to prevent spreading or getting the novel coronavirus. But there's an issue with worldwide shortages and access. So there is no harm in wearing a mask, even if the benefit is modest. It is worth doing. 1 year ago, businesses were not allow you to wear sunglasses and hats inside. Wow, how has the world changed? This is why we should be humble at all times, as we don't know what is next. The environmental benefits of this has amazed me. What is the real benefit of the coronavirus in terms of environment? The whole world has reduced or changed its daily routine due to COVID-19 for the sake of global health. Working from home, without a doubt, affecting everything in our lives, including our carbon footprint. Now more than ever, companies are realizing that their businesses can stay afloat by allowing employees to work from home to keep everyone safe and healthy. A major plus is that working from home is decreasing its carbon emissions from our daily commute and significantly improves the air quality, even in a place like Cayman where the quality is not that bad. According to the climate group, working from home has the potential to reduce over 300 million tons of carbon emissions per year, not to mention all of the other awesome benefits, such as work and life balance and decreased traffic congestion. In Italy and China, the air quality has improved immensely since people are staying at home due to coronavirus. Good quality air days increased by 21.5% in February alone compared to last year, and the carbon emissions decreased by 25% as China is the largest polluter in the world. This is good news for all of us, and even NASA has documented the visible changes in their images. So there is a silver lining in all this, as at least we can say that downtime is benefiting the environment. Moving on, as Health Minister, I trust that everyone had a blessed Easter weekend. I will continue to do a job I've been privileged to do on behalf of all the people of these beloved islands by God's grace and through His strength. Today, I would like to give you an update on the work that was presented to His Excellency the Governor, Honorable Premier, Honorable Minister Hugh, the Deputy Governor, and myself on Thursday, April 9th. It's important to you, for you to know that 3 groups of professionals were charged with reporting on the areas of clinical management of patients with COVID-19, testing protocols we will be moving to, and developing the testing capacity for COVID-19 across our islands. We are very pleased to have these reports to see the excellent joint working that is happening across the private sector and the public sector, and through primary care to the highly technical competences of the critical care units. The Cayman Islands are blessed with the breadth and depth of facilities and professional experience it can draw on, right up to the ability for Health City Cayman Islands to provide ECMO, which is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and which provide essential oxygen to the blood whilst giving the lungs a chance to heal when they are most challenged. The Clinical Management Group presented their plans to look at patients with COVID-19 from primary care through to those that might need intensive care and ventilator support. They talked about how patients would flow through the system, how beds would be used across the island, and how overflow facilities might assist, which are being developed in the John Gray High School gym, Jasmine Hospice, the Aston Ruddy Center in Cayman Brac, and others. They have also been sharing the latest scientific knowledge about treatment protocols for the best management care of our citizens. The testing groups have been talking through the challenges of increasing testing capacity, This is not as simple as it might first seem because there are a lot of steps involved in testing for COVID-19. The swabs needed to be taken, the sample needs to be processed, the RNA, which is the genetic material of any virus, needs to be extracted, and finally the PCR machine needs to be operated to look for evidence of viral particles. There are specialist people and supplies needed for each step. This group has been working to maximize the output of their testing facilities by combining the strengths of 3 hospital laboratories. Finally, a last group has been working on changing our testing protocols to widen the group which we test. And as you heard Dr. Lee mention earlier, however, I can confirm that we will be testing a number of frontline groups, such as certain hospital workers alongside the inpatients in the hospital and a wider category of people who present with any respiratory symptoms. I would like to thank the professional groups for their diligence and in particular the collaborative work they continue to do in the country's fight against the COVID-19 threat. I also want to take a moment to address my hard-working staff at the Department of Environmental Health. As you may well have guessed, there is a heightened level of concern in the collection of all waste, and in an effort to ensure privacy of those who are ill with the coronavirus, the DEH sanitation teams are following best practices while working under the guidance of the Public Health Department at the Health Services Authority. Therefore, they are handling all garbage as if it is suspect to COVID-19 contamination to ensure additional safety at all times. As Minister for Health, it is my responsibility to ensure that all essential workers are being cared for and are kept safe. I'm pleased to say that our DEH teams have been supplied with the necessary tools like hand sanitizers and the relevant personal protective equipment such as gloves and masks to ensure their safety. Additionally, the DEH is currently looking at ways to install on-site laundry services for its workers. If we keep them safe, we in turn keep you safe. In saying that, I remind you that we all do our part in keeping our families and our neighbors safe. We can do this by ensuring that garbage is disposed of correctly, and I am asking the public to follow the proper garbage disposal guidelines as outlined by the DEH. These guidelines can be found online at www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Simply do a search for the words garbage disposal. There are also specific guidelines for the disposal of trash of suspect COVID-19 patients, which can also be found on the same website. I encourage everyone to take a few minutes to view these guidelines. I want to take this opportunity to thank all our sanitation workers and every essential worker at the DEH. We appreciate what you do, and we thank you for the extra effort put in to ensure that our communities are kept safe. Finally, to the general public, please stay home to save lives, and remember that staying home is K-mankind. God bless you all. Sorry for taking so long, but I had to take some of Saturday back.
Thank you very much, Minister Seymour. We're going to move to the panel now with questions, and I'll begin with some questions from the public. The first one is for you, Premier McLaughlin. So after you talked earlier about the possibility of a 21-day lockdown, I'm sure you've been getting a lot of messages, as I have. Well, I have been getting a lot of messages that people are saying, lock us down. Give us enough time to get to the supermarkets and lock us down. And I'd like to answer them and explain to them what you explain.
Be careful what you wish for.
It's not that simple. But my question to you is, give us a scenario of what it would look like for us to really start to relax, let's say, the curfews. Do we need to go 14 days without having a single positive case? Set up that scenario for us.
Yes, that would be the minimum. 14 days without a single case would start to give us some confidence that we could reopen aspects of the economy and relax various restrictions that are currently in place. 14 days is not a guarantee, but it would be, and we wouldn't do it all at once.
Right.
you do small sections so that you can then assess that situation before you start moving into other areas and opening up. Some of the last things that would come online would be permission for public gatherings or sending children back to school because of the sheer numbers of people against each other. But we still have some optimism that is all possible. As I say, the situation overnight causes us a lot of worries, but we still believe that can be contained, and there will be aggressive testing of all persons who are known to be contacts. And in 48 hours, we should know what the situation is there. By having the facility here now to be able to test that aggressively, we can move and we can react much more quickly and operate on the basis of data rather than speculation.
Okay. I have one more question for you before I move on to the other members of the media, and it relates to pension. I'm the pension woman. Everybody's asking what's happening with pensions. I know you guys have been in discussion. You've said that a million times already. How much further ahead?
But I made a report on Saturday, and yesterday was Easter Sunday, and even me would lock down. So I don't have anything to report.
But I'm sure you were still working.
I don't have anything to report.
I'm sure you were still working, sir.
Yes, I was working, I'm afraid, but I wasn't in here. No, I think we've reached agreement. My caucus did on Friday. I reported on that on Saturday. And what we now have to do is get that into legislative form. Right. That is a draft. And get a meeting of the Legislative Assembly organized to make it happen.
And any idea when that may happen?
Well, I was pushing to have that this week. I don't know if we're going to get, because we lost Friday of last week and we lose Monday of this week. But I'm hopeful, certainly by next week, if not towards the end of this week, certainly next week.
Okay, so there you have it for members of the public who are Caymanians, residents, expats. They're moving ahead on it, and we'll have some decision in the very near future for those who are asking that question. Okay, so now we go to April from Radio Cayman. April?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I believe this question is probably best for Dr. Lee. And the question is about whether government has done or received any epidemiological modeling for Cayman specifically, or are there plans to? And perhaps even explain, what that is for the folks who are asking.
That's not a short answer. The Ministry of Health in Cayman has been doing epidemiological modeling since February. This has been shared with other UK overseas territories, and some of them have used it to inform their decisions. It's not a straightforward process because there are an awful lot of inputs you have to consider and then tailor to the particular Cayman scenario. That's the short answer, I think. If there's anything more specific you want, I'm happy to help. We have received a lot of guidance from Public Health England in particular, but I have to say that has actually more been in line with the Ministry of Health's thinking rather than changed any direction of thought.
So just to make sure that I don't mischaracterize what you're saying, the modeling is part of what we've been doing and looking at throughout, and it's information that's not straightforward and doesn't necessarily fully direct our actions, but it does help us see with what we're doing and whether it aligns.
Yes, I think I would agree with that. I mean, the bottom line is I think a lot of countries have shared the worst case scenario, which is what we are desperately trying to stay away from. And that worst case scenario for Cayman was shared with senior members of the government very early on in this process, which is one of the reasons they have acted quickly, and I applaud them for that, and I thank them for that. That modeling has needed to be tailored extensively because of the impact of the suppression measures which we've taken. which, if you look at the different suppression measures, which is social distancing, closing of schools, all of the different suppression measures, closing restaurants, bars, the extensive work that we've done, introducing the curfews, we have implemented almost everything that we could do, apart from one that we have been struggling with, which is more extensive testing, which we're nearly about to do. But of the range of perhaps 7 things that the government could have done, they have essentially done. So I'm pleased with that. But those different things affect the modelling a great deal. And I would hazard a guess that from the worst case scenario, it could be anything up to 50 times difference from that worst case scenario.
Thank you, sir. That helps a great deal.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Now we're going to go to Wendy at CNS.
Thank you, Donna. Pursuing the issue of testing and the increasing levels of illness that we're now seeing, one of the things that a lot of people have raised is that over the last month or so, people have died in the hospitals or at home, and they have not necessarily been tested for COVID. So we don't know whether these people who have died were positive. We were wondering if there was any, if the HSA has kept records of these deaths, so once we can ramp up the testing, we can go back and backtrack to try and make sure that those connected families to people that have died over the last month or so are also tested to help us manage the health situation, which is obviously now growing. And I have a sort of second question, which is linked to that, but I think it's probably more for the panel, which is once we start ramping up the testing for frontline workers, not just police and healthcare workers, but also supermarket and food delivery people, are we in a position that we can allow perhaps work permit holders that are currently unemployed to change their jobs so they can fill in where the people who test positive will have to be isolated? And that's pretty much my bundle of questions.
So I think the first one was for me, Wendy. And
Yes.
I think you need to realize that we don't, the doctors are not going, there's no reason for them to share this information. But a lot of people in the hospital have been tested. So it's not a question that we don't know. We do know because anybody that is seriously unwell in hospital is likely at the moment be getting a test for COVID-19. And a lot of those are coming back negative. So a lot of the intensive care patients, for example, will be tested just to see, could this be related? Could it be contributing to their illness? And we are reporting all the positives to you. And so we are getting some information in that regard. I'll leave the other question to the panel as you suggested, and I know they'd love to answer it.
Well, the only thing is, I was a bit put out that, or I am a bit put out that Wendy would inquire first on behalf of work permit holders.
Yes.
We have now thousands of Caymanians that are unemployed, who were once employed in the tourist industry. So I would hope that the first approach would be to Caymanians who are unemployed before we start looking to find new jobs for work permit holders.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you, Premier McLaughlin. We're now going to go to Reshma from the Cayman Compass.
Thank you, Donna. My first, and it's going to be rapid fire, so I apologize. Dr. Lee, my question's first for you. We now have, as you announced today, a positive case with travel. Can you say or explain how this is possible, or if this individual was on the most recent BA flight?
That person I do not believe was on the BA flight. Their routing was regional, not European. I don't understand why you're saying, how could that be? I don't follow that bit.
Well, we've been in lockdown for 21 days now. The 14-day incubation period has passed, so questions are coming in. How can we still have travel history?
Yeah, so people can, don't forget that people can, it may take up to 14 days for somebody's symptoms first to appear, which is why we have this 14-day period. I understand they came back since that Monday, I can't remember the date now, I think it was the 16th of March, I'm not sure, but since the day that we said everybody needs to isolate themselves, and they isolated themselves. But even after that 14 days, then they may have another 14 days of being sick. So it could be a whole 28 days until they are fully recovered, having had an exposure quite some while ago.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I think that clarifies for those who have been asking. Now, 2 points. First of all, do you have any update on the contact tracing that was supposed to be conducted on Saturday that we didn't get an update on that? Can you provide us with that?
Yes, it didn't reveal anything more than we knew at the time. They had done some preliminary work, but we haven't found anything further, which means that, yes, it's of concern. There were people that were reported that we couldn't link it to a travel-related event.
So that is, in fact, community transmission.
Correct.
Okay. Now, a question came in on the announcement that you made with the containment area at the Georgetown apartment complex. Can you explain to us what containment area, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so a notice has been issued, signed by the Medical Officer of Health, I believe, Dr. Samuel Williams, to require people to stay in their dwellings to undergo surveillance because of the risk of transmission of COVID-19.
Okay, thank you very much. This question is for the Premier. So you discussed ramping up an aggressive testing period. There are several countries that are requesting from Cayman test kits. Can you say if there is a designated quota that the government is working with and if you will be selling any further test kits?
Yes, we dealt with this on Saturday. Dr. Lee and his team have said 100,000 is a sufficient buffer for Cayman, so we are prepared to sell on the other 100,000. We've sold 35,000 to Bermuda, and we've sold 20,000 to Barbados. We currently have requests from Belize, Bahamas, St. Lucia, and I believe there's an inquiry from Jamaica. I haven't seen the latter three, but we even got one from Roatan, but I don't think that their systems are compatible with ours, but I'm not the expert. Although I'm approaching it now, I think, when it comes to test kits. But so we're considering all of these things, and we'll see what we can do to make as many people and as many countries, or to assist as many countries as we possibly can. Oh yes, and there's also a request from Turks and Caicos, although I don't think they've got their machine in place yet. So, but there are only so many kits to go around. So.
Okay, thank you, Reshma.
Then high demand, naturally. We've had a couple of complaints come in from some asylum seekers who have been struggling locally and they don't fit into the category of work permit holders for the assistance. And they've indicated that they've gone to immigration and they were sent to NAU and they were turned away from NAU. Is there any guidance that you can provide to them on how they can access any assistance?
Well, they shouldn't have been turned away. So if anyone can provide us with details about that, I'll personally check into it. But in the absence of that, I tell them to go back. We've effected some changes at NAU, and I'm hopeful that things are going to improve significantly in terms of the time it takes to process these applications over the course of this coming week.
Thank you very much, Premier. My final question. Now, naturally, you would expect that people, with the announcement today of the closure of public beaches, having a lot of queries, concerns, and questions. One of the questions that has been asked is if people will be allowed to fish from the iron shore and not, if that would be allowed, or is it a wholesale that they will not be able to fish as well? Would that still be allowed for them?
I think the Commissioner was very clear that no activity is allowed below the high water mark.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reshma. We're going to go now to Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times. Ralph, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Premier. I wish I had a crystal ball to give you. It would make your life a lot easier. I have two brief questions. The first one is, when will we know what the curfew will look like after the existing one comes to an end on Friday?
Well, on the current trajectory, I think it would look very much like it currently looks now. If we get some terrible reports, the curfew is going to become more restrictive.
Thank you. And
I'm not sure that's what you wanted to hear, but
okay. And a clarification: the banning on the beaches or the hard curfew for the beaches, is that just for today, or is for the rest of the week?
it's for the rest of the week until the current curfew, both the soft curfew and the hard curfew, expire on the 17th. But during the course of this week, in consultation with His Excellency and the Commissioner, the Cabinet will come to a view about what the next round of curfews should look like. There is no question that we're going to have to continue them for the foreseeable future. Just a question of what form they take.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ralph, we're going to move to Wendy from CNS for our final question for the panel.
Thanks very much. I just need to follow up because I think I phrased my last question very badly. What I was trying to get at was, once the testing is ramped up and we will have holes in the frontline service, and therefore, does government have a policy to assist everybody that's going to need to replace important staff very quickly? And part of that was an inquiry from work permit holders to CNS about, is it possible for them to be able to change their status so that they could be involved in that type of thing if they were required after local people had been employed?
The key bit is after local people have had the opportunity. Absolutely, yes. If they are not Caymanians who are willing and able to do the respective jobs, obviously we want to help businesses to be able to continue to function. But if we have work permit holders who are here and can't get away because the airports are closed where they come from, the usual issues that we're grappling with, then of course we would make the necessary adjustments so that they can work, because if they're working and earning, then that is one less, or those are a few less that government will have to concern ourselves with in the short term.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to everyone who's made today's press briefing possible. His Excellency has...
I could just say a little birdie has told me it is Reshma's birthday today, so I'm sure the whole panel will join me in wishing Reshma very happy returns. We've not made it very easy for you to celebrate your birthday, I'm afraid, Reshma, but better luck next year.
A happy birthday, Reshma.
Happy birthday, Reshma.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Again, if you have a complaint or any questions regarding employment issues or unemployment issues for that matter, you should go online to gov.ky/coronavirus. Lots of FAQs there and answers to your questions. Also, if you have any business as far as e-services are concerned, you can go online to eservices.gov.ky to find out about police clearances, vehicle licensing, or renewals of licensing. Of course, we'd like to thank everyone who's made today possible, the team, as well as our panelists, you, the viewing and listening public. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hope you'll do the same again tomorrow. Until then, have a good one.
Blue serenity in yonder deep, the fear of death, but you pray, O Lord, for your soul to keep. Dear boredom, nothing but a selfish film over our eyes. Some people just don't get it. COVID-19 is a murderer, and your defiance reflects upon your character. Yes, I get it. Cabin fever is a breeding ground for depression, but I have a confession. Yes, you guessed it. We are in this together, and although our stories are not the same, they're similar enough to understand the pain. Read a book. Engage your mind. Don't give negativity the time to fester. Don't let it rule you, so that Cayman too can see this through. Those beloved smiles that we shared with friends doesn't have to end, but you are consumed by what you do not have. When the health of Cayman is in your hands, there are many without work. They can't go to Kirk's in a panic, worry about organic. Premier says to live frugally so the repercussions don't hit so brutally. Read a book, they say. However, it is true. To discover something your mind never knew, educational absorbency in this time of uncertainty. Together, Cayman, together. Together, let's stay home, not just you alone. This is not a punishment, but a journey to success, to restore our faith in the human touch and the beauty of shared air. Together, we are a nation. Together, we are stronger.